Oh, hello there. Welcome to today's podcast, which is with Lynne Maguire, who I met many years ago. And Lynne runs a food thing to not really give it its technical term, a little sort of trailer type food thing, which is really lovely things that we're going to come on to. So, firstly, hello, Lynne, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jared. Thanks a million for having me.
Yeah, that's a pleasure. Yeah, we tried with video, but it looked like the bandwidth wasn't really proving. So this one's going to be audio only. But what I will do is try and put up picture. Yes, okay, that's good. That's your Into the Wild, is it trailer? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, little food trailer.
Yeah, and that's where you live as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That's the top garden there, you can see.
In Cavan in Ireland.
County Cavan, Evelyn, yeah, northwest Cavan.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we'll come on to that. There used to be a rock and roll band called Crazy Cavan and the Rhythm Rockers. I don't know if that's connected. Well, certainly not connected to you, I wouldn't have thought.
Before my time.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Okay, then. So can we start off then by you talking a little bit about your upbringing and particularly aspects of your upbringing that may have led you to sort of lead a life less ordinary,
perhaps? Well, I grew up in Dublin, so just in the suburbs. My mum was from Dublin. My dad was from near County Roscommon. He lived in Dublin for many years. So there's 6 kids in the family. And at the time, so we're talking back in 1983, I became vegetarian due to a very close friend of mine, who still is a very close friend. And as you can imagine, back in the early 1980s in Ireland, there really wasn't very much vegetarian food about.
Yeah.
So although my mum, God love her, wasn't a great cook, when I became vegetarian, I kind of had to cook for myself because it was either that or I didn't eat. So I think that's probably where I started my cooking journey. I think it was always in the family on my dad's side, because a lot of my aunties were trained chefs and they would have worked in the industry. And I think maybe those genes just passed along a little bit. So yeah, just over the years then I kind of got more and more into food. And obviously when you become vegetarian, you just start exploring more food options, kind of broadens your horizons. And I think one of my sisters put it brilliantly. She actually worked as a chef for about 25 years, also vegetarian chef. And somebody said to her, as a vegetarian, what do you eat? Like, what do you cook as a vegetarian chef? And she goes, well, if you just take out the meat, the fish, and the chicken, I cook everything else. And for me, that just kind of really summed it up. There's just a whole world out there of amazing food that nature's given us. So that's really kind of what started my love of food, I suppose. And then over the years, kind of did other jobs and other things. And then when we moved to County Cavan, I kind of was looking for opportunities for work and sort of came across an opportunity in a kitchen. I had no formal training as a chef, and I suppose, blagged my way in, and they gave me a job, and that was at an organic centre that ran courses in sort of sustainable living and different kind of cookery classes and things like that. So I was working in the kitchen there. We used to do lunches for people coming in on the courses, and we had access to all the veg grown in the gardens, so all this beautiful organic veg coming in. So that kind of started my, I suppose, professional cooking journey. So did that for a good few years and worked in a few other places. And sort of up to a few years ago then, I was again looking for work. And in this part of the country, it's quite limited as a vegetarian chef where you can work. So I got to thinking, well, there's this kind of food that I want to make. there's nowhere that will give me a job to make it, so I'll have to make my own job. Hence the idea for the food trailer came about. So
Fantastic. And there we are with the food
that's
trailer
where
in
I'm
the
at now.
picture. What was it like
Yeah.
growing up in Dublin then in the 80s?
Dublin, I think, was quite a different place in the 80s to what it is now. It seemed that it was more, maybe a bit more of a community. It still had that feel that people kind of knew each other. I don't know really. I mean, I haven't lived in Dublin since 1995. So I suppose my experience of it going back now, it's not as an outsider, but obviously as somebody that doesn't live there anymore. I think there's probably an awful lot more things happening now. But back when I was growing up, obviously there was kind of pretty good music scene, and I suppose maybe not so many kind of restaurants or good places to eat, not for vegetarians back then anyway. That thankfully has changed. Um, yeah, well, I suppose I was just growing up in the suburbs, so yeah.
What about culture? What was it? What was Dublin like for you growing up in terms of things to do?
Um, there would have been, I suppose, kind of a lot of theatre going on. When I left college, I trained as a fashion designer and actually went into
Oh yeah.
costume design. Yeah, uh, so I did that for a good many years. So yeah, I would have been kind of around the whole theatre scene and stuff. So there would have been a lot of things going on, and then kind of film festivals and art exhibitions.
Mm. Of
Yeah, I suppose there would have been kind of stuff going on. All right, yeah.
course, for the benefit of people who don't know, which is probably everybody who's listening to this, we know each other through your husband Dave, of course,
Yes.
who's an old friend of mine.
Mhm.
And didn't you meet him in India? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
not the most obvious place to meet. So what's the process that takes you from Dublin to India then?
so at the time, I was working as a bicycle courier, and I was saving to go traveling and had planned to go to India and had my flight and everything booked. So this was 1994. So my flight was booked for, I think it was October, and a plague broke out in northern India, and all the flights had stopped. No
Wow.
European flights were going in at all. So people were saying to me, don't go, like it's really dangerous. And something in me just said, you have to go. Like it wasn't an option, something was telling me, no, you got to go. So I waited and waited until the flights kind of came back in. So I think it was nearly the end of November. So eventually I went and landed in India. So that would have been, yeah, the November. And then in January, I met Dave walking down the street, and he was with a Scottish fella that I had bumped into, as travelers kind of made up and cross paths. I had met Chris, and he was with this guy, English guy. So we got chatting, and as I say, the rest is history.
Mm, mm. I mean, what made you want to go to India though? What brought you there? Was it? I mean, in the 60s and 70s, obviously, it was part of the hippie trail.
Mhm.
Were you following a similar kind of vibe?
Well, how it came about, the sort of year and a half previous to that, I'd gone to a kibbutz in Israel with a girl that was living in a house that I had an apartment in.
Okay.
So we went to kibbutz for about 3 months. And she had been in India the year before. So she was telling me about India and how amazing it was, because it hadn't really been on my radar before that.
Mm.
So then myself and another girl that was on the kibbutz said, right, we'll go home, we'll save for a year, and then we'll go to India the following year. So that was kind of what happened. But like at the time, like a lot of people, you say, oh, I got to go to India to find myself, and that was never sort of my motivation for going. But it wasn't until I actually got to India that I kind of realized that I was lost. So
Right, right.
it was
So
an amazing experience.
was that quite scary then, finding out you lost all that way away from home?
Not lost in the physical sense.
No, obviously,
Yeah.
but it would still
But
presumably be a bit unnerving to be a long way from familiar surroundings in a country that's not just a different country, but it's a different way of life and so on.
a very different way of life. And I think it taught me an awful lot about appreciating life and appreciating what you have and not abusing the resources that you have, to protect what you're given in life.
Mm,
It's an amazing country. It's, people there are just incredible, have real kind of zest for life and appreciation of life that often we don't have in the West, I think.
yeah, I've never been, but I'll tell you one thing I was thinking about when you were saying that was when you said you went to a kibbutz, and that
Mhm.
really took me back to when I was younger. Quite a few people seem to be going to sort of work on kibbutzes, and I've obviously we're all older now, but I haven't even heard of kibbutzes. I don't even know if they still exist. I wonder if it's like a very much of its time, the whole kibbutz thing, perhaps before it
Yeah,
kicked off so bad.
I don't know really, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean,
What attracted you to a kibbutz?
it was kind of my first opportunity to go traveling. As I said, the girl that was living in the same building that I was in, she kind of had it all figured out, and I sort of tagged along.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
before that, I didn't know what a kibbutz was either.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It just occurred to me that you don't hear about them anymore, but that could equally be the circles I mix in, of course,
Mhm.
being not young travellers, of course, being older
Yeah.
people who just sit about, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. So you're in India, and did you have a sort of spiritual yearning or interest going on, or not?
Well, if I tell you, this is going to sound very hippy dippy, but when I arrived in Mumbai, or Bombay as it was called back then,
Mm.
um, so I ended up actually traveling not with the original person I was going to travel with because she had backed out. So I hooked up with a guy who just happened to be traveling over at the same time. So we just went as traveling companions. So we arrived and sort of came out into this huge airport, and then there was buses everywhere, and people everywhere. And even though I'd come from the city, this was just huge. Like it was so busy. It was just very overwhelming. So we didn't know what bus to get or where we were going, and it was all kind of too much. So I thought, like, let's just go and sit down on a bench over here and chill and sort of relax for a few minutes and see what we're doing. So we went and we sat down in the sunshine, and this amazing feeling of calm just came over me. And so I don't know if it was a voice in my head or something outside of me, but I just heard these words, "Oh, welcome back, welcome home." And it was just like all any kind of worry or troubles just completely lifted. And I just felt so welcomed and at home and just calm. It was incredible, like,
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So what happened then?
you know.
Where did you go? What did you do when you after you sat off this bench?
We just kind of found the right bus that we needed to take to where we were staying. Just kind of things just slotted into place after that.
Did that change you? That moment sounds like something you remember quite vividly.
Yeah, I think for the whole kind of journey, I just felt that there was maybe another kind of presence not too far away. I mean, I would describe myself as an atheist, um, but I do believe that there is something, not maybe necessarily a God, but a higher power of nature or something. And
Mm.
I definitely felt very connected to that kind of feeling of spirit or other for the whole kind of 6 months that I was there.
6 months. That's quite a long time to spend that far away from home, isn't it? Wow.
Mhm.
Did you travel about in India much?
Yeah, no, an awful lot. Yeah.
And did you find different bits of India to be different from each other?
Very different. I mean, the south would be hugely different from the north, and each area has its own food, sort of different kind of cultural things going on. So yeah, I mean, you kind of forget that it's like such a vast country.
Yeah.
You know, we're just not used to those kind of distances. So yeah, definitely. You like for an example, there was one time I was in a guest house, and the local people there were like, "Oh, you know, we can go out and get you food if you want." So they, you know, were happy to go to a restaurant and get takeout pretty much for you, you know. So they were like, "Oh, what would you like?" So I had mentioned some dish that I had had previously in another place, and they'd never heard of it because obviously it was a completely different region that I was in, and it just really kind of struck me. Wow, you know, like it's so big.
Yeah. 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 That's pretty crazy, isn't it? You don't get that in Ireland or England, really, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, okay. So then you met Dave, and I'm presuming you kind of like fell in love pretty immediately. And I'm hoping I'm not being too intrusive there, but you got together pretty immediately, certainly, didn't you? Is that
yeah,
right? Yeah. Yeah. And then you hatched this idea of living on
yep,
a
yeah.
horse-drawn wagon.
Well, that was it. You see, we met in Varanasi, and we'd spent kind of maybe a week or so, 2 weeks together. And he was actually studying yoga at the time, so he wanted to finish his course. So we had arranged then to meet up a month later, in another part of India. But when we met up again, he said to me, he had been talking to a friend of his about me, and his friend said to him that my friend is a woman for life. And he just went, "Oh my God, yeah, you're right." So when I met him again, he said this to me, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I kind of wasn't expecting that. And then he said to me, "Run away with me in a horse and cart." So I kind of took a few days to think about this.
I bet it did. Yeah.
And another very freaky thing happened. This is the power of the spirit in India. So we were on a bus journey, and I kind of had this kind of, I don't know if I was kind of half falling asleep or maybe asleep, I don't know. But I had this vision, and this voice said to me, "Look at what you have." So I saw like a kind of a blackboard, and there was a circle at the top, and then this other circle kind of came from the bottom and joined the top circle. You know, it was like a half circle and a half circle till it became full circle, and it started glowing purple. And this voice was just saying to me, "Look at what you have." Because for the whole journey, I've been thinking, you know, is this a good idea? Is this what I want? Is this my life going in the direction I want it to be going in, kind of thing? And then this
Mm.
just voice was saying, "Look at what you have." So the next day, then I said, "Yeah, I'll run away with a horse and cart."
Fantastic. So how long were you in India after that then? How long were you plotting the whole thing?
Uh, so that would have been March, I think. And then Dave came back to England kind of about a month before I was due to come back. So I came back in the May time.
And you both met in Ireland again after that, did you, or in England?
Yeah, so he was staying in Brighton at the time. I came back. I spent a few days with him in Brighton, and then I came home to sort out a few things at home. And then he arrived into Dublin about a month or so after that.
So how do you go from landing at an airport to living on a horse-drawn wagon? How does that work?
What's the protocol?
What's the etiquette? Yeah.
Well, it says in the guidebook. Well, the way we did it anyway, I don't know what way people usually do it. So we lived in Dublin for a summer. So I went back to working as a bicycle courier, and Dave joined me on that. And I have to say at this point that he was the luckiest bugger alive, because it did not rain one time that whole summer that he was on the bikes, whereas I spent the winter soaked. Just want to put that in there. I don't feel bad about it,
But yeah.
but we we worked in Dublin for the summer, and then I think that October we moved down to County Clare to a place, little village called Gort. So Dave had friends that had a house down there, and we moved in with them. And then the landlord, after a while, wanted that house back. So myself and Dave ended up renting a very small little cottage up in the mountains in Killaloo in County Clare. And we sort of, at the time then, we were looking for a horse to buy. So we found a local guy that dealt in horses, and he had a lovely young mare that he trained up for us. And in the meantime, we had bought a book on making model gypsy caravans. So we got a plan for a barrel top wagon, and we scaled it all up to big person size, and we made a wagon.
That's brilliant. Did you worry at all that there might be sort of, that, making a model and making a full size one is a bit different, and there might be some quite important bits missing or something?
Honestly, that never occurred to us.
Well, just as well, probably, I suppose. So you built your own horse-drawn wagon, which is pretty incredible, really. How long did that take?
I think we kind of did it over a winter. I just remember part of putting it together being extremely wet and mucky. So it must have been, I suppose, maybe 4 or 5 months.
Oh, wow. And then you set off.
We did indeed. Well, we were living on a mountain then, as we do now. And we kind of hadn't taken into account the fact that we had to get a barrel top wagon down side mountain. So luckily enough for us, we had a friend who had a ladder, and he put the shafts of the wagon into the boot of the ladder and brought it down the mountain. And then we walked the horse down and hitched her up at the bottom of the mountain, and off we sat.
Wow. And how long did you do that for?
It was about sort of 3.5, nearly 4 years.
It's tough, isn't it? As I found out, it's a tough way of life.
It is. Yeah, you're kind of in the elements all the time. Every single resource that you need, your food, your water, your sticks for your fire, you all have to get very physically by hand. Like when we needed to get water, you would have to either get a 25-liter water butt on your bike and go to your local stand pump or into town, or hitch up the horse and go and get your water. So
Yeah. I think water's probably the biggest culture shock, because where I'm sitting right now, and probably where you're sitting right now, we're kind of a few steps away from a tap, aren't we? And
yeah,
and that's always there. It doesn't run out. You don't have to pay for it every time you turn the tap on. Well, I mean, you are paying for it in a way, but you don't have to kind of hand over cash or anything like that. So yeah, I think to be without the grid, I guess the water grid, the sanitation grid, the electricity grid, was it all a big culture shock for you?
Don't think so, and I don't know why it wasn't. I think possibly if I hadn't been to India, I think maybe it would have been more of a shock. But I think sort of traveling there and just seeing maybe a slightly simpler way of life, that was kind of what we were after anyway.
Yeah. I was wondering if India had kind of been good
Certainly,
training.
I think then, yeah, definitely, yeah, for sure.
How would you say people reacted in general? I'm sure there was a gamut of different reactions, but when people saw you coming down the street on a horse-drawn wagon, what kind of reactions did you inspire in people?
Yeah, like you said, varied. We all often tended to travel on our own because it didn't sort of mean there was, a whole gang of people maybe coming into a small village or a town or something. So when we were on our own, we'd maybe park up, sort of in on bogland or somewhere out of the way. And then often if you did get maybe local people coming down to see what the story was, Dave was great. He'd be straight out, telling them our entire life history, like where we'd been, where we were going, how long we were staying. Generally that was no problem at all. People were fine. It's different if you had like, a whole posse of horse-drawn people turning up on a bit of land. Obviously people would not be maybe as receptive to that.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I think the best reactions we ever had was from like traditional traveler people who, years back would have traveled in barrel top wagons. We were kind of classed, I suppose, as new age travelers. Not that we ever particularly wanted to go under any kind of banner, but that's, I think, probably what we would have been seen as. But like traditional travelers who had then kind of moved on to caravans, when they saw us coming down the road, literally at one stage, we were in Donegal, these guys jumped through a thorn hedge to come and say hello to us. And they were like, oh my God, that's amazing. Our grandparents would have traveled like that. And they were yeah, it was such a nice reaction. It was lovely.
So Dave would tell people where you were from, where you were going. Did you know where you were going?
No, no clue. all they want to know is that we weren't going to be staying there for a year and a day or whatever.
No, sure. But there wasn't a roadmap to do this for a certain amount of time, or
No.
you were just taking it as it comes, were you?
Yeah, there was certain places we kind of had goals to get to. Like when we started off, we went to Kerry because we had been asked by a girl that we had met if we would make her a barrel top wagon. So that was kind of our first port to call. We went to Sneem, and we actually ended up there for quite a while and got trained up in making candles. We got married down there, and then we were invited to go on a tree walk, which involved kind of a group of horse-drawn people going around schools and teaching kids about sort of planting trees and recycling and stuff like that. So there's different things kind of came along as we were traveling that kind of, I suppose, steered our course, but we never kind of set out to sort of really go any particular route as such.
And were you on the horse-drawn wagon when you got to where you are now?
No, we sort of finished up the horse-drawn journey in the Midlands, really. So that was back in 2000. At that stage, we had sort of moved on. We were in a caravan. We still had the wagon, but then we sold it. We sold the horses just before that. And then I was expecting our first child, so things were kind of changing and just being horse-drawn. We kind of felt that we had taken it as far as we could, really. There wasn't sort of maybe a challenge mightn't be the right word, but there just didn't seem to be sort of anywhere else that we could kind of take the journey as such.
Yeah. So you're in a caravan, you're pregnant.
Mhm.
Did you have the baby in the caravan, or did you actually move into a house by that point?
So that would have been, I suppose, early kind of 2000. We moved into a cottage. That's how we came to be in Cavan, because at the time we were making candles and doing craft fairs and stuff like that. So we had met a woman through that circuit, and we were saying, oh, we're looking for somewhere to rent. So she had a house about 10 miles down the road from where we are now. And she said, oh, you can rent my cottage if you want. So that's how we sort of ended up in Cavan, purely by chance because of that offer.
And at this point, I'm completely flying blind as to your story. So, did anything happen between you living in that cottage and where you are now? Then,
Yeah, when we moved into the cottage, we kind of said, look, we have a baby on the way, so we're going to need to know that we can have this cottage for, the foreseeable kind of thing.
yeah.
And she said, no problem, you can have it for as long as you want. So that was great. We moved in. We set up a candle making workshop in one of the outbuildings, and that was going fine. And then 6 months later, she turned around and said, "Oh, I want my cottage back." So at the
Yes.
time, we had no savings. We had a loan with the credit union for a car. That was it. A bank wouldn't touch us for a loan because we were self-employed with the candle making business. So we thought sort of buying a place wasn't an option. So we looked in the area to try and rent somewhere. But the problem was that we needed some kind of an outbuilding or a shed where we could have a candle making workshop. We just couldn't find anything. And then we went to the credit union and explained the situation. And they said, well, we don't do mortgages as such, but we could give you a home improvement loan. Then we went looking for somewhere to buy and found the place where we are now.
So it was run down, was it?
It had actually been empty for 35 years at that stage. So basically, from the time that we were born,
Blimey. Okay.
it had stood empty. So it really felt like it was waiting for us.
Yeah. Jesus. So who owned it? Who lets a place stay empty for 35 years?
It was originally owned by McGoldricks, was the kind of family name, and they had a shop here. So it was kind of one of the big kind of local shops in the area. So what's now our sitting room on the kind of gable end of the house, that was the shop. So they would have sold everything, it was kind of, an all-in-one type shop back in those days. So
Yeah.
it closed down, I think, in the early 60s. So there's actually it's a funny story because the people that owned it were quite well to do. So they obviously, when they got all their supplies, they came from Enniskillen, which is just over the border. So they would have originally come obviously by horse and cart. So because this family had a bit of money, they were one of the first people to buy a Model T Ford car when they came out.
Oh, right, okay.
So the first time it came up with deliveries, it actually stopped at the bottom of the hill because it ran out of petrol. And they were horrified. They said a horse never would have stopped at the bottom of that hill. These new cars are rubbish. They're never going to take off.
Brilliant.
So we know how that turned out anyways.
Yes. Well, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So when
So,
did you move into this place then?
so we bought it in April 2001. So then there was like hardly any windows downstairs, a few kind of broken sash windows upstairs. There was no electric, there was no water. The stairs had been taken out because the sheep had moved in downstairs. So yeah, it's in pretty bad state, really.
Wow. And how long did it take you to make it habitable? Is that the word?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, well, it was probably maybe 3 years before we kind of moved in any kind of sense of the word, and that was just maybe one or two rooms. Um, so yeah, a long time. Still a work in progress. Not fully there. But I think there's always stuff to be done in a house.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd imagine there is. Yeah. What gave you the idea of Into the Wild then?
Uh,
Oh,
that
you
came
explained that a bit actually, didn't you? Sorry.
the name, or
The name, is that from the film?
that's not well, that's not quite where it came from.
Okay.
How it came about. Um, well, like I said, kind of previously, I was wanting to make vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free food. There wasn't kind of places that would employ me around here doing that, so I wanted to do my own venture. And originally I thought, yeah, the food trailer would be good, with the idea of maybe bringing it to festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about all the miles that would entail, and I just, from an environmental point of view and a physical point of view, I just didn't want to be doing that many road miles. So then I thought, well, it'd be really nice to do it from home. We thought we have such a stunning place here. It's time that we shared it with other people. So kind of that's how the idea for the trailer came about. And then I was looking for a name for it, and there was a few kind of on the back burner. And then during lockdown in 2020, myself and Dave, were just out in the garden having a coffee. And the next thing, this massive big black shadow went overhead, about 10 foot over our heads. And we looked up, and it was a golden eagle. And this golden eagle stayed around in the field next door to us for the day. It was hunting. So we were calling up friends, going, come up, come up. There's a golden eagle in the garden. So after that, we just, well, trying to think of a name. Dave just went into the wild, because this place really is wild. Having a golden eagle visit, we reckon it came down from Donegal, because they had been reintroduced there a good few years back. But we just thought, well, this place is so wild that you can have a visit from a golden eagle. So that's
Yeah,
kind of how the
sure.
name came about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Um, what I've got another couple of pictures here actually. There's one of it open. But firstly, there's our message as well. Hold on.
yep.
Let's get rid of that. So that's you outside,
Yeah. So that was the last day of this season, finishing up.
and then we've got one of it open. There we go. Oh, yes, there we go. Let's go a bit closer in. So what have you got going on in there then? That's a coffee making machine, is it? With the back.
Okay. So I have a little one group coffee machine there. So the coffee that I sell is locally roasted in Sligo. So it's a single origin organic fair trade coffee, and it's pretty darn good, even if I do say so myself. And then depending on sort of where we are, we've done a few events, so we're kind of menu changes when we do events. But when I'm at home, I generally do soup and open sandwiches, and then a few different cakes, tea, coffees, and hot chocolate. Then when we go to events, often I will do waffles with various kind of different toppings. We actually have an event on now tomorrow evening, so I'm going to be doing falafel wraps for that one. So it kind of changes depending on time of year and where we are, but all of the food is either vegetarian, vegan, or gluten free, so it kind of caters for everybody.
Right, right, yeah. So um during the summer months, I suppose it is, you do it at your house, or in your garden or whatever.
Yeah, so we're open from May to September.
How many people do you sort of get over the course of a day then?
It's so hard to say. Every day is just different, so some days could be really, really quiet. Other days we could have, a car park in the garden.
Right,
Traffic jams, so it's very up and down. It's really hard to know.
because it's quite I mean, I know where you live is quite off the beaten track, really, isn't it? That's into the
Yeah,
wild, as you've said, really.
yeah.
So it must be a bit of a job just from a business point of view to actually get kind of bums on seats to get people to actually come to you. Do you do a lot of advertising or?
It's all really through kind of social media, really, and word of mouth.
Hmm,
Mm. I mean, one of the best examples of social media working well, I was telling somebody about it recently. So where we are, we're just at the foot of Quilca Mountain. So there's a very, very famous walk on the Fermanagh side of the mountain called the Stairway to Heaven, which is like a boardwalk which goes up to the mountain. But on
right,
our side, we have with what you'd call the more natural kind of walk up to the top of the mountain. So it's become more popular over the last few years. So there was one day I had put up a post on social about a cake that I had on, and this lady arrived and she goes, "We were just up on the top of Quilca and my phone pinged and your cake came up," and I said, "I have to go and get that cake." So they came down the mountain for cake and coffee, and I just thought, wow, that's the power of social media. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
what's your normal week like then? If you're open Saturday and Sunday, I
Yeah.
presume you're cooking other times of the week, are you, to get it all ready?
Yeah. So Friday would be my prep day. So I'm up at 5:30 on a Friday morning. I go and do my shopping. I collect my bread from lovely artisan sourdough bread maker in Enniskillen. And I come back, have a quick bit of breakfast, and then I get cooking for the rest of the day. And then we're open Saturday and Sunday.
Fantastic. And cake. Um, I don't think I've ever made a cake in my life, really.
Oh,
I've got this idea that they're
you
quite
haven't lived.
Sorry, say that again.
You haven't lived.
Well, I've eaten a few, but I thought making cake was quite complicated. Is it not?
It's, I suppose, as they say, uh, cooking is an art and baking is a science, and that kind of really means that when you're cooking, you can basically throw things in and it'll pretty much work out. Whereas if you're baking, there's certain kind of measurements and things that you kind of need for the overall work.
Yeah,
So yeah, look, if you
I'm
can,
definitely more of a
if
cook than personally, I suppose.
to be
Um,
honest, I always say that if you can read, you can cook. So if you can follow a recipe, you can
yeah,
cook. Anybody can do it.
yeah.
Really, you can.
So how's it all going? Have you got a community? Do you have like regulars and stuff on the weekends and so on?
Sorry, you're breaking up there.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Is it? Do you have a kind of community of people who come back regularly on the
Yeah,
weekends?
I would have a lot of local people coming. A lot of repeat business, which is fantastic. You always want to see faces coming back. You know, you're doing something okay if they're coming back for another go.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, it really varies. Like we would have quite a few cyclists and walkers in this area, and then started getting a few motorbikers coming in this year, which was nice. So yeah, people from all sorts of kind of places coming. You know, from people that have heard about you and really want to come and check it out, to people that are just passing by and saw the sign out on the road and go, "What, coffee here in the middle of nowhere? No, couldn't be." And they come in and go, "Oh wow, it is." But yeah, lots of different kind of people. So it's been really nice.
Do you earn a living out of it?
Sorry.
Do you earn a living out of it?
Uh, well, see, I have another job as well, 2 days a week.
Okay.
So um, at the moment, it's probably not a full wage. Um, because I had to get a loan to set it all up. Obviously, that's getting paid off. So probably not quite self-sufficient yet, but
But you're
hopefully
in
we'll.
profit, presumably. I mean, loan aside or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I'm
pretty good.
not.
'Cause that was one of the first things when I saw it that occurred to me, that it seems like a tough call to to have to get all those ingredients and spend all that time baking them, etc., etc. Then get people into the middle of nowhere to actually sort of to enjoy all that stuff. It just seems how do I mean? It seems, yeah. I was thinking, crikey, can they really make that work? But you're sort of 2 years in now, aren't you? So obviously it is
Yeah,
working.
yeah, yeah. I'll have to say, I think last year probably was a bit busier because we opened just as kind of restrictions were lifting and people were just mad to get out, and to be somewhere obviously outdoors and safe for meeting up was great.
Yeah,
This year it's been a little bit quieter because people have been abroad again, and sort of from talking to a lot of other different businesses, I think that's the case overall with people, that sort of footfall has been down because people are away. So hopefully next year we'll bring another season, and who knows what might happen. Hopefully it'll be bigger and better. But we're working on that over the winter, so exciting things to come.
Absolutely, yeah. So if people want to get in touch with you, I presume you can see this because I can see it. Not you, but I presume people watching can see that your website is intothewildfood.ie
Yeah.
and hello@intothewildfood.ie is your email address. And you actually get around different places as well, don't you?
Yeah,
So,
we've just done a few kind of local events. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
if people want to get in touch, you can either probably just message me through either Facebook or Instagram, or yeah, if you want to chat, give me a ring. Numbers up there.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's your Facebook address? It's not on those photos, is it? I know what I'll do. If I go to your website and hover over your
Yeah,
Facebook logo,
so Facebook is just
it
Into
doesn't
the
work.
Wild.
Okay.
Yeah, just
So what? Yeah. Okay. So
Facebook is just
sorry, go.
Into the Wild.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. That's brilliant. Yeah. So that's how people will get in touch with you, and um, I think it's really fantastic. I think it's quite inspiring to sort of picture you of a weekend. You know, just everyone sort of sitting around having coffee, and it must be really enjoyable. I presume you must get a lot out of it.
Oh, a huge man. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's days where it's quiet and it's lashing rain, and you think, what on earth am I doing this for? And then the next day, it could be really busy,
Yeah. Yeah. And
and actually sometimes even on days that it's quiet, you'll just get that one customer that you'll just kind of make a connection with, or just have a chat with, and you think, yeah, this is why I'm doing it. It's just that whole kind of social interaction and sort of being there. Like, I think especially because I deal with food for people that have allergies and that, and you get somebody that comes up and they go, wow, I can eat something, that just makes my day. And then if you have like a family that come and everybody can eat something, because you might have one person that's gluten free or dairy free or both, and just to see people's face light up and go, oh my god, I can eat something, we can all eat something together, and it's just lovely. It's really sort of, feels like a real blessing to be able to provide that for people. I feel very lucky that I can do that. So
absolutely.
yeah,
And it also harks back to the days when being a vegetarian was the same problem, doesn't it? And
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, I remember going to visit
So
my
yeah, yeah,
parents
for
and they'd have
sure.
to ring up
And
a
like
pub and see if
sort
there's
of,
anything I could eat, So
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And it's just to facilitate people going out and being able to eat something that's good quality, that's tastes good, that's flavorful, is good for them, and like everybody can have what they want to eat. It's great.
yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, that seems like a great place to wind it up. I'll finish off by, well, firstly by thanking you, of course, for a fascinating chat, all about a fascinating life. And
Yeah.
so yeah, thanks for that, Lynn. And if anybody wants to know where you are, I'm not even going to attempt to describe it myself. So could you tell people where to find you?
Yeah, so we are in Glangavlin, which is County Cavan in Ireland. So
Okay,
yeah,
that's
look forward to seeing you all.
absolutely. So yeah, thanks a lot for your time. I'll keep you on the line and thank you properly after finishing the recording. But for now, that was Lynne Maguire and her amazing tale and Into the Wild. Go and check